God bless you all this morning. So glad to be able to minister to you this morning. I'm going to talk to you today about how God knows how to connect the dots. God knows how to connect the dots of your life. When God created you, He made no mistakes. When He put the dreams, the desires, the promises, the visions, and the things that you're holding on to, He didn't just put them in you and think, oh man, how am I ever going to make it come to pass? You need to understand, God knows exactly what He's doing with your life. When He created you, the dreams that you are believing God for, or a family member who needs to get saved, or that sickness you need to overcome, whatever you are facing in the natural, it may seem a big thing, but remember, God knows how to connect the dots. God knows how to work things in your behalf. The thing is this, you may say, John, if I had these resources, if I had these connections, if I had these talents, these skills, then I could believe God can make it come to pass. No, you need to understand, God knows exactly what He is doing. He has put the right talents, the right skills, the right personality, the right makeup. Everything you need is already given to you. God has placed exactly the right people, the right connections, and it's only in due season God can make everything come to pass. You may say, John, I'm believing God for placements, but all I see is area after area. I'm believing God for that relationship to turn around, but all I see is it gets dissolved more and more. I see things turn against, and I don't see any way in the natural. I'm looking God for giving me something, but I see the economy is going down, the stock market is low, I don't stand a chance, all the odds are against me. No, you need to understand this principle. It may seem like a mission impossible in the natural, but we serve a supernatural God who can do the impossible. No matter what the scripture says, with men it may be impossible, but with God all things are possible. No matter how the odds are against you, don't be discouraged, don't give up, don't lose hope. Remember this important principle, when God created you, He knows exactly what He's doing, and it's only in due season He will connect the dots and take you to your final destination. Now you need to understand, in the scripture there was a guy called Joseph. God had put a big dream in Joseph that one day his brothers will bow down before Joseph. In the natural, all the odds were against Joseph. In fact, the brothers not only were not supportive to him, what they did was they were even against Joseph. In fact, they sold him into slavery into Potiphar's house. Joseph's life began from the normal home. He ended up going into the pit. From the pit, he ended up going into as a slave to Potiphar's house. From there, he ended up going to the prison, and from the prison, he ended up going to the dungeon. It went from bad to worse to worse to worse, and Joseph's life became like a very bad state. You may be in a similar situation, believing God for something. You may be hoping on something to turn out right, or situation at home, in your family, or whatever you may be believing God for, and you may see everything is going against you. Just like Joseph, I'm just telling you, don't lose hope. The scripture says that wherever Joseph was, God was with him. In other words, you need to understand, when you are connected with God, you don't stand a chance to lose. No matter where you are today, God knows how to connect the dots. It seemed like he was in the wrong track. It seemed like the dream can never come true. It seemed like he was in the pit and the palace, in the prison. There's no way he can come out. But one touch of God's favor touched him to an all-new level of his destiny. He ended up reaching the second in the highest in the whole of Egypt. You need to understand, God put the dream in you. God put the desires in you. He knows how to make it come to pass. It may seem, you may say, John, you don't understand. I'm believing for this. I believe to be in this kind of company. I believe to be here. But then I see in the natural, I'm in the wrong place. I don't have the connections. When we think about that, we go through the next character called Ruth in the scripture. Now, when we think about Ruth, she was in a land called Moab. Next slide, please. She was in a land called Moab. And according to the scripture, Moab was actually a place for wickedness. It was known for wickedness. It seemed like she was in the wrong place. But if you look through the story of Ruth, the long story made short, there was a famine in another land, and there was a family which moved from that land and moved to the land of Moab. And in that family, there were two sons. One of them got married to Ruth. And after that, all the three men in the family, the father and the two sons, died. It seemed like an impossible situation. But the long story made short, because of the acquaintance of Ruth, that Ruth ended up going back and meeting one more man called Boaz, and then eventually ended up being in the generational line of Jesus Christ. Now, what you need to understand is, you may ask this question, if you look in the small thing, you don't get the message. You may ask, why did God bring the famine? You may ask, why did God have to make that family leave from that place and go to the land of Moab, a wrong place, a sinful place? Why did God have to allow that loss to come into that family? If you try to ask everything step by step, you don't get the message. You may be asking God, why did I get that area? Why did I get that loss? Why did I get that setback? Why did I get that blow in the relationship? You may not get the message out when you look into the small thing, but I want you to learn to look at with a big picture. When you look at the big picture, there you get the message. If there was no famine, that family would have never left the land. If that family had never left the land, they would have never got acquainted with Ruth, and eventually Ruth would have never found out to a final destiny that God had for her, ended up being in the generational line of Jesus Christ. You may not understand everything right away, but I want you to take your ears and understand God knows your best interests at heart. When you think about Ruth in the scripture, there's one more thing, that she honored God. She stood up for the God of her faith. The thing is this, when you, just like Joseph, stay connected with God and always honor him, there's no stopping for what God can do in your life. You may seem like you're in the wrong place with the wrong crowd, but eventually, just like that family had come all the way just to pick this girl up, God can bring the right people across your path. God can He can turn things around. He can shift people across in your favor. Now, the next thing you need to understand, you can compare this to a chess. Now, if you think about chess, okay, the scripture also says in Psalms 24:1 how the whole world is the Lord's. In other words, everything, everybody, every opportunity, everything is in the hands of God. God knows how to shift people across to make it for your favor. The thing is this, when you think about the game of chess, there's something very important here. Imagine that you are one group and the enemy is the opposing group, and God is playing on your behalf for you. And each and every coin on the chess thing is your different parameters, like maybe your relationship, your skills, or your talents, whatever it is. Maybe God, when you see God is playing on your behalf, the number one thing you need to understand is, even before the battle has begun, you're already a victor. God has already won the battle, so you're a victor today. You are a winner. So whatever the situation is, remember, like a chess, God is moving every step across in your path. You may not understand why He's moving your skills so much in forward, or sometimes He will move some coins of your life, maybe your skill, maybe He moves the rook, or maybe He uses the horse, or whatever He uses. Why does He do that? The thing is, God knows how to move, what to move, when to move. You need to learn to trust the Lord regard to the same. You may move your relationship only to an extent now. Maybe this is not the time. Maybe He will move across to sharpen your skills, to make you a better person. No matter how it is, learn to just relax, knowing God has your best interests at heart, and knowing that He knows how to connect the dots and make you be the winner of the game. And just like the scripture says, I love the scripture which says that in Jeremiah, I knew you even before you were formed in your mother's womb. Recently we had something called the mega play. And the people didn't just go on stage and perform on the spot. They didn't just do that. There was something that happened even before they came on stage. There was somebody who worked behind the screens. There was somebody who lined up the plot. There was somebody who decided how everything should be. You need to understand that's the same thing. Even before the performance landed on stage, there was somebody who worked behind the screens. That's the same thing with you. Even before you landed on stage, even before you landed on planet Earth, even before you were formed in your mom's womb, there was somebody who lined up the plot for your life. life. There was somebody who worked behind the screens. There was somebody that is the Lord Almighty. He knew you, He formed you, He chose you, and He has a great destiny for you, and He has lined up the right people, the right resources, the right connections, the right opportunities. He has lined everything all across and has already pre-planned your life. When you get yourself connected with God, I believe and declare, just like you see, God will open up the curtains and unveil the great and bright future that God has in store for you. So today my challenge to you is, no matter how impossible everything seems to be, don't give up, don't lose hope. Remember, God knows your best interests at heart. And remember that you have exactly what you need to fulfill your God-given destiny. And you have what you need, the right people, the right things. And also remember, when you look at the big picture, you realize God knows your big picture. God knows your best interest, and God knows how to connect the dots. And just like Joseph and just like Ruth, when you get yourself to get connected with God, and when you ask for His plan, His will, and when you continue to honor Him and put Him first place in your life, I believe and declare that every one of you will see that God takes you exceedingly and abundantly far and beyond what you can ever ask or think or even imagine. May God bless you. Amen.